So I thought I would do something really natural and just talk to you all while I'm also doing my banded exercise. This is the very minimal of what you can do. It's actually very tiresome. But I want to talk to you a little bit about focus zones because that was a post that I did and it got a lot of positive feedback. People reached out, people liked, people followed. And I thought, what a great way. Whew. I'll be doing it intermittently. What a great way of bringing a conversation around all the different ways that you can focus. So if you're anything like me, you're very familiar with the term hyperfocus. Hyperfocus means that I'm able to pick a task that I want to do and one way or another activate this piece inside of me that can just zone focus in on getting it done and really in a short period of time can achieve it. So hyperfocus is one of the most common ways that people refer to focus in a group that is commonly diagnosed with ADHD or ADD, but also those that haven't been diagnosed use the term very commonly, I think, and very casually, because they're just talking about being able to cut away all distraction. And so that is an amazing task to achieve if you can do it. And when you've been in groups with people who maybe talk about activating or accessing their hyperfocus, they've talked about finishing kitchens in a weekend. They've talked about building things and doing an entire, paper in a weekend, and all these amazing results that come from being able to activate your hyperfocus. So if you're watching this right now and you have activated and tapped into your hyperfocus before, please put it in the chat, put it in the comments, and share, right? Let's share the amazing benefits of hyperfocus and the things that you have accomplished by activating it. And there are different ways that you might activate your hyperfocus. You might just do it. It might just be a season. It might just be a time of day where you somehow are able to super zone in. I think a lot of the science says that mornings is a great time to reach that state of uninterrupted deep work or hyperfocus. Deep work is another way that they refer to it. And so mornings, maybe there's a season like when you're indoors a lot, maybe winter, if you're in a place that experiences extreme weather. I do where we are. I'm in Baltimore and we, not the most extreme weather, but we definitely experience weather. And when it is cold out, maybe you don't go anywhere. You just kind of sit still and, get warm. And sometimes that can be a way to zone in. I also use an app known as FocusMate. And FocusMate is an app that allows you to just kind of log on, pick a time slot. And when that time slot comes up, and you can do it, if let's say I went on right now, I could set up a session and within 15 minutes be in one. And so when I get on the session, another person will have booked the same slot with me, and we are like study partners. And we, at the top of that work block, say what it is we want to accomplish during that work block. And then we start to work with the cameras up and the app on mute, and you work together. Some people like to keep it off mute. Some people like to share, but it's really an agreement. Like, do you mind if I go off mute? Sometimes I can be distracted if someone's not muted. Most people mute. Most people mute immediately. Some people never even bring on any sound. You're just typing what you plan to accomplish. And then at the end of the work block, you say whether or not you achieved it, whether or not you have more to do. It's really less than a minute when you end that work block. And then you just kind of leave that session having accomplished whatever you set out to do during that period of time. Once I do 2 or 3 of those FocusMate sessions, I'm typically in hyperfocus and mode. And once I have done 2 or 3 sessions, I don't need to do as many more. So I tend to go like for, 2 weeks, I'll do like 15 sessions and then I won't do it again for 3 weeks. And then I come back because it just kind of brings me back into focus mode. easier to get into deep work, easier to prioritize what it is needs to be done, easier to commit to one thing until it gets completed. And then once I'm complete, I just, kind of don't need it, or I don't think I need it. And, when I want to activate it again, I can. It's free. You can pay, I think it's $7, maybe $10 a month or something like that to have unlimited sessions, which is what I do because I want to be able to kind of use it until I don't need to anymore. But again, that is a way that I activate my hyperfocus. So, but there are many other focus zones that people don't talk about it. Let me tell you, let me say right now, this is not necessarily based on any scientific model. It's not based on research, published research or otherwise. And so it is theory. It's very much theory. And it's in the goal of which is to open up new ways of thinking for you. So I don't have a doctor for you to say, this doctor said that. I'm not a PhD, not yet anyway. And I don't have a published study to refer you to, but I do have the seed of an idea on how you can access how there are different levels of focus happening and how you can access them at times and activate them, and how they can help you achieve results based on the results that you want to achieve. Which brings me to the point that a lot of times when we talk about focus, we tend to assume that there is one thing that we all should be focusing on. So when we say, well, the child is having trouble focusing, or that person is they don't focus so well, there's an assumption there. And that assumption is that it's assumed what that person would be focusing on. Well, they would be focusing on the lesson. They would be focusing on the chalkboard. So the example that I have is when I watch sports with friends, which isn't often, I don't have too many friends that's pressuring me to watch sports. But when I do, if it's not a sport that I can really get into, or I haven't watched as much, or I don't know the rules of the game, right? Like soccer, there's some different things happening that until you kind of get it, you're just watching people running. And when that happens, I'm focusing. I'm definitely focusing, but I'm not focusing on the same thing that the rest of the people who are watching the game and are diehard fans are focusing on. And it can take my whole attention. Like I could be focusing on these uniforms and the colors they chose, or the emotions of the players. I love how dramatic they are when they fall. Like I can be focusing on all these different layers of things, the sense of brotherhood. You see, I picked all those things out. That's what I'm focusing on while I'm watching soccer. I'm sorry to all the soccer fans. If you're a soccer fan, feel free to rep your soccer soccer team in the comments. But that's just to show you that there are many things that you can focus on. So first, when we talk about focus, we have to understand that there are different things that you might focus on, and that there's a very valid part of the conversation is establishing what you want that person to focus on. Well, when I talk, you don't, someone might say, well, when I talk to you, it's like you don't even hear me. It's like you don't focus on what I'm saying. They might be focused very much on what you're saying, but focused on how you're saying it, or focused, even if it is on the actual words that you're saying, focused on what caused you to say this. And so you could tell someone, go to the sign, make a left, and then go down 2 blocks and make a right, and they get completely lost. You gave them all of the instructions. It was very explicit. And still somehow, and that's because you can listen from different angles, just like you can see different perspectives, or light has different, sound has different frequencies, light has different levels to it. I'm sure someone's going to tell me what that word is that I'm looking for, but there are different intensities of light. And UV light, for example, and light that you may not be able to detect the same, right? It doesn't seem as bright like these lights that are here. Okay, so there is layers to many things, and what you're saying is there's different ways that I can view that. You ever talk to someone and they'll tell you, oh, I listened to what you said the other day, and you want to go back and listen to what you said. Let's say you sent them a recording of something. That happens to me a lot. I'm sending someone some content I created or something I said somewhere. And then they'll say, oh, I listened to it and I loved it. It just, it made me feel whatever. Or I listened to it and it was interesting. It made me, I wasn't sure if I agreed. And even though I know what I said, I'm the one who said it. I will have to go back and listen to it again from that person's angle, from that person's kind of viewpoint. I'm not them, I can't be them, but I have to listen from their sort of perspective or from the way I know them to be to get an idea of what they may have heard. And I'm the one who said the words. So I hope that gives you enough illustration. So let me tell you, one of the other focus modes is this passive active. So they talk about multitasking it's impossible to multitask. No one can, multitask. And I find that very untrue. I find that I can multitask, although I am very in touch with what's happening there. So there are times when maybe I'll go to set something on a counter and maybe go to set my keys on the counter and turn to also turn on the light. I can do those two things. And in fact, the more there's a pattern for me, the better. The less likely is a mistake will happen or I will bump my arm or something. I create these sort of patterns and traditions. But if I set my keys down and I don't look at me executing that task, if I don't watch my keys kind of hit the counter before I turn on the light, the keys will fall. So I know the counter is there, I'm dropping my keys and turn on the light. And if I turn my attention to the light before the keys have sort of securely either at least landed over the counter, they will fall on the floor. Okay, what are you saying? What I'm saying is that all of our attention goes in a sort of passive active stance. So there are times where we're actively thinking about one thing and passively thinking about that thing. And when we're passively thinking about that thing, we are actively thinking about something else. Or maybe actively not thinking, like on purpose, vegging out, watching TV, scrolling social media, whatever it is. So there's this way of being passive I learned a new word and I'm passively remembering it, when it comes up or it's in my head, it's in my short-term memory, or actively remembering it, which is I'm saying the word, I'm looking at it, and I'm studying it very actively. So they talk about some of the geniuses of our time that discovered that when you want to remember, when you want to really reignite your focus, you can take a little nap. I know, sounds counterproductive, but you take a little nap and you put a pen in your hand and you kind of hold your hand off the edge of a chair like this, right? And then by the time you doze off to sleep, your hand will let that pen go. The way I've just done my arm, the pen might actually stay in my hand, but if it's hanging off the edge of the chair like this, it's likely that once you go to sleep, your hand will fully relax and the pen will fall. And so when you're doing that, your brain is soaking in all of the things that you just learned or just read or just wrote, or you're working on the problem that you're trying to crack. And so that allows your brain to sort of think about it in a passive way. And that is just as important as that active, whatever you were doing in the lab on the computer. I was going to say on the typewriter. That's just as important as that time. So again, that's that passive active thing. And that is a focus. That is a mode of focus. So if you're teaching someone or in a learning environment, or you're having a conversation with someone, it's important to note maybe they are passively listening to me as opposed to actively listening to me. So one of the things that we do is we want people to look at us when we're talking, and that's our way of detecting and seeing from someone, are they actively listening or passively listening? What's so funny is this generation, the millennials and slightly younger, they do this thing, I think the Gen Zs, they do this thing, I'll overdub it if I got that wrong. They do this where they want to be on FaceTime, they want to FaceTime you. If they're not FaceTiming you, I think they don't believe you are actively paying attention to them. They believe you're either multitasking or paying attention to something else. And it's interesting because they're kind of not interested in passive interactions. especially these very, you know, so manicured and curated, right? They are the generation that is, don't over curate mine. Give it to me as it is. You know, they're kind of over all of the presentation and pomp and circumstance and decorum. And they just want, you know, kind of the meat of it, the heart of it. And I see it. I see where that comes from. I respect it. And it is still that sort of passive active dance that we do, because maybe they will eventually reach a stage in their lives where they do want something slightly curated. They do want something slightly presented, you know? And for the writers and for the movie makers and for the musicians, I think even they have taken a layer of decoration and pomp and circumstance off of what they deliver, but they still have more than maybe those that are not in those spaces, you know? So they understand there's a little bit to this presentation, but it's not, you know, hit you over the head with it. So passive active is a focus mode or a focus type. So let's talk about social emotional. There is a social emotional focus. So if I, for some reason, come in a room and don't feel a high sense of belongingness, there's a certain level of my attention that's very much focused on gaining that, on getting to that sense of acceptance, getting to that sense of, you know, I'm here, I'm in the room. And so I've recorded this the wrong way again. I'll get it right by the third time, guys. Hang in there with me. So social emotional means I'm thinking about how I get along with these people. I'm thinking about, is there a sense of belongingness? Is there anyone here I bond with or I have something in common with? And so it is social. How do I socially fit in or not fit in? And emotional. And how does that make me feel? What impact is that having on me? That takes all of my focus when I am focusing on that. You can talk to me about something that is a logic or based or scientific based or, you know, really heady. And I can go there, but I'm not, it's not present thought. I'm not present with you there. I'm present with you and what is my belongingness. If I speak up, is someone cringing or are people smiling? If they're smiling, why are they smiling? Is there sort of like, there's a level of that. And there was a stage in my life actually where I'll decide if I want to keep this in or edit it out later. There was a stage in my life where I was about 100 pounds heavier than I am. And it would come into a room and I would feel that sense of like, uncomfortable. I know I don't really, you know, fit, and I feel this way about myself, and it wasn't positive, that self-talk. But I would actually, in my mind, and I should be ashamed to admit this, I am a little bit, I would have to note how everyone in this room has something that they're dealing with, that they're dealing with about themselves that they're not very proud of or they're not really happy with. Everyone has it. And so only once I would like feel like everyone has it, everyone's dealing with this, would I feel like that was an approachable room. Otherwise I would be nervous and even, you know, shaky. I've even given presentations and, you know, really botched it. And I'm a talker, like I'm a presenter. I feel like that's going to be a whole chapter in the book, how I was presenting other people's content and I didn't have a high sense of belongingness and I dropped the ball. I pooped the bed, as they say. So there's very much this sort of social emotional focus that's going on. And that, you know, are people talking about me? Can you imagine in a classroom, are people talking about me? Does the teacher like me? I don't think the teacher likes me. Maybe, where did I leave something? I'm always leaving things. So then even your self-talk and your, you know, I belong here. I don't belong here. I have to prove that I belong here. You know, why am I not achieving this or doing this that I want to? And if I am, where are my friends? And, well, maybe I don't care about friends so much. So that self-talk, that chatter, very much a part of that social emotional sort of continuum. And I'm not saying all self-talk is emotional. but it tends to meet somewhere on that scale. It tends to be about yourself in the world amongst other people. So there's a lot of work being done in classrooms right now with social emotional learning, because we're learning that kids have PTSD just as much as soldiers that have come back from war. They've been deployed overseas and partook in war and have been trained to be warriors. We've unlocked a whole new part of your brain. And they come back with PTSD from what they've seen, from what they've experienced, from what they've unlocked. And we are learning that kids, second graders, third graders, first graders, fifth graders, are experiencing PTSD at similar levels. And it has to do with something called ACEs. And those are adverse childhood experiences. We have a whole Dean Talks on trauma. And we were able to take a deep dive into how traumatic events kind of leave their imprint in our bodies. And so when someone says, I'm triggered, I've been triggered, you've been triggered by something you've experienced before. So you can't be triggered by something you didn't personally live through. You can't have trauma from something you didn't personally live through. You might have trauma from having a proximity to the original victims or the original people who lived through it, but that trauma is not direct. And so it's a different thing. And so I don't want to invalidate anyone who has watched a movie about some horror or been to a museum about some horror and really felt a level of trauma from it. But that trauma is housed in it's 2023 or it's 2022 and I was safe, but something happened in that space. So there was an energy in that space where I experienced this thing, or where I watched about this horror that happened in 1970, whatever, 1980, whatever. And so it's kind of a different level of trauma, but still valid. Okay, and so the reason why we go through all of that, or I'm going through all of that, is to let you know that when people are triggered, that also is a whole part of their brain that isn't able to do calculations and have logical, functional conversations. It's very much in safety. Get me to safety, get me to security. How can I be safe here? And so if you live in how can I be safe here? How can I be secure here? You aren't able to get back to that space where you're having logic, calculations, left brain sort of interactions. So it's a focus, very much. It's a body focus. All right, so I think I've made my point there. Overstimulated is one. So when someone is overstimulated, when I am overstimulated, I might be out with friends, I might be, at a party, at an event, someone's birthday party. And when I'm overstimulated, I need to leave the area. Like I want to kind of be away from people. It just means there's a lot going on. There's a lot of pulls at my attention. There's a lot of pulls at my emotional space. There's a lot of pulls there's a lot of interrupting, conflicting. It's a lot going on here. And it's not an outburst all the time. It just means, okay, I'm realizing that I'm feeling overstimulated. It's kind of like a seasickness, actually. Like a queasiness, and kind of feel sick to your stomach. And so that overstimulated feeling becomes a focus. It also is a body focus, but it's more of a tension. You might even call it anxiety. It's more of a tension, and it's more of a, you're focused on, I'm okay, it's okay here, or I need to go out that door and just sit and kind of just be still and take in the earth. So right on cue, another thing that I do is mute everything. It's funny, my watch has made its way back to sound and I don't know how. So I mute everything and put everything on vibrate or nothing. Yes, do you want to know that your phone is ringing? Eventually, I do want to know that my phone has rung. But do I constantly want buzz, bing, ding, bling, 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 blah, bzz, No, I do not. I can do without all of it. And so that definitely overstimulates me because, as layers of things pull on my attention or pull on what it is I have to do, there might be like, I'm in a meeting. Or I'm going to a meeting. I have a meeting in an hour and I have work I need to do. So you have a time tension and you have a you have a time tension and you have I have a deadline, like I need to make sure. And so then on top of that, my keyboard has this weird thing going where the E is sticking and the T is now doing it too. And I can't lean on it. You know, I can't put my hands on it and really weight on it because that causes some sort of weird skew. So I have to type in perfect, kind of like this is the way you're actually supposed to type, with your wrists like this. Okay, so that's happening. And then I got another layer on it. So then my phone is buzzing, bleep. And then maybe something's happening in the house. Maybe someone knocked at the door or there's steps back and forth. Bloop. I'm a little bit chilly. Bloop. I need a bio break and I haven't taken one. Bloop. You know, and so then we got like do. And we have this ability to push to get through. And then we kind of have that moment of release. You know, the meeting is over with. I'm sitting here and kind of like recover. All of that, that's overstimulated, and that definitely takes your focus. So although you can do focused tasks during that time, because there are so many layers of things, you kind of have to take care of the body things first, the things that won't wait. If you need a bio break, that's only going to wait for so long. If you're chilly and you start shivering, you need to take care of that, right? And then, you know, but the things like the sticking keyboard, you might not ever really handle that. And so you do something to compensate for it. So you get everything to a state where it can hold, right? That is focus. I am focused on getting everything to a state where it can hold. With overstimulated, it takes a lot of body focus. It takes a lot of mental focus. And although I can do other focused or learning tasks during that time, I can learn new things during that time. But, you know, it's kind of difficult. It's like another layer on top. I needed to have already learned it and it's rolling somewhere in my brain, which, by the way, that might be another layer. There's this word I learned and I'm still trying to remember. So just something to keep in mind. And then finally, stimming. Stimming is a focus. Stimming is I'm doing something. It doesn't necessarily have a purpose. This has a purpose. Thank you very much. Maybe not at the pace at which I have been intermittently doing it or not. But stimming is like, there's something that I need to do. Maybe it's clicking my pen. Maybe it's the little fidget spinners and I keep spinning it, spin. And it's a focus. I have found that although it may cause some people to think, for me, I start to get like worried about people seeing me with this fidget spinner, and if you're too engaged with the fidget spinner, that's sort of, and I also, that's sort of, you know, I'm worried about what that looks like. So that's a focus. That's a little social emotional focus, interjecting and whatever it is that I really would rather be focusing on. And secondly, I worry about the brain power that I'm using to do it. So I'm flicking this thing and I'm just sending energy out the window. It's as if I have the air conditioner on or the heat on in the house and the window is wide open. And that's how I feel about stimming. I know that it is a sort of outlet for people, and I know that I would invite anyone who has insight about stimming that can help me see how it has been helpful for different people. Maybe it is just about that acceptance, about that I need to stem right now, and I'm going to sit down and stem until I don't have to anymore. But I don't want, and then I invite that conversation if you know more about it. For myself, for me, I don't want that appetite to grow. And so I don't do it as much. I definitely have my like natural stemming habits. And sometimes that is picking my nails. Sometimes if I have earrings, I pull the back on and off my earring, on and off sometimes while I'm listening in on meetings. These things, these exercise things, or, you know, there's all sorts of little, you know, things that I do to like mini stem, but there's a levels of intensity to this thing, and the fidget spinners they became the next level for me. And I wasn't ready to commit to the fidget spinners. Maybe it's me. I'm not ready to commit to stimming at the level that it needs to really happen. So those are my breakdown of different ways that we focus. So when someone says, you're not focusing, or she has a problem focusing, or he has a problem, he doesn't focus. Maybe that helps you have the vocabulary for how you are focusing and what you might be focusing on. Or maybe it invites a conversation about what are you considering focus? You know, really, I'm paying attention the most, not necessarily when I'm listening to something else, but when I am slightly, minorly otherwise engaged. So if I'm active and listening, I am very much like kind of focused on this eye contact, and it takes me to a social emotional focus as opposed to listening to what you're saying. So video meetings are fine, but I find that I have to look off screen or look away from the group in order to really completely focus on what it is that's being conveyed to me. When I'm speaking, sometimes I do watch people's faces because I tend to get clues from that. You know, am I being clear? Is it a little bit unclear? But I wish that it was, I could say it's very structured. And, you know, when I see someone frown, I stop. It's not. Sometimes it is, I'm just keep defaulting to this one person's face because that's the closest in my line of eyesight. And they're not giving me any clues. And maybe I'll look over there, you know. It's very like kind of randomized. So maybe there's more practice there for me with that, but that is just also just validation, I think, for me, that it's best when I can just slightly look off camera. When I'm really trying to get my thought out, I'm looking off camera. I'm not looking into the camera or onto the faces that are on my screen. And of course, I'm talking about a Zoom meeting, a Teams meeting, a Skype meeting. I've also found that when there is an audience, I don't operate with the same level of precision, the same passion, the same freeness. I guess you could say there's a little bit of socio-emotional things going on. I don't know, but when there is no audience, I'm operating more smoothly. Once there is an audience, I'm going to drop T on myself by mistake. I might trip. There's a nervousness that happens, and I don't know what that is. A therapist, a PhD, someone could probably give me insight on that. But the reason why I align it to focus is because when I'm by myself, I am focused on what I'm doing. I have this thing when I go into the supermarket, I pick up the cart, and I pick up the cart on one side, not the cart, the little hand basket on one side, one handle, and I kind of pop it, and the other handle pops into my hand. And it's like my little favorite thing when I go into the supermarket, because I pull the one handle up, so the basket is dangling, I'm holding it by the one handle, and I pop it, and the other handle jumps in my hand. Now, certain markets, it doesn't cooperate. I don't know why. Like Shoppers, their baskets were great. They did it. Dollar Store, their baskets are great. Safeway, when they changed, they changed to Safeway, and Safeway's baskets didn't pop in my hand the same way, and maybe Giant. So I don't know, maybe it's like who made the basket, but the point is when I am in the zone, I'm like popping my basket, I'm stepping up on curbs with ease. But if someone's with me, or I am, and there's usually no one with me, or there's people in the doorway, just crowding the doorway. So either I could have brought the person with me, or it could be total strangers, and it makes no difference unless it's like my sister or my mom. There's a little bit of like, I'm not as smooth. I can't do it as smoothly. So my focus is broken. So think about those things that I've said. If it resonates with you, please let me know. Please. Don't let me be out here alone. But please, let me continue to unpack as much as I've observed. That's what I consider myself, an observer. I am a creative, and I'm an observer, and I'm a communicator. And so those three things come together for a perfect storm that allows me to come and present to you today. Thanks for listening, and I hope you comment and share and like And I hope that you share with a friend. And I hope that you have a wonderful, blessed, self-acceptance, beautiful, bountiful day. Have a fruitful day. Check out Ripe Fruit Foundation at ripefruit.org, RIPEFRUIT.org, or the Instagram at Ripe Fruit Creative.